This is the Hagmann and Hagmann Report for today. It's a tremendous Tuesday. It's the 7th day of January 2014. I'm Doug Hagmann, co-host, along with my son Joe Hagmann. Together we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, reporting together from our studio, where it is a very, very, well, I don't want to say blustery, but I think it's seven below right now outside of our studios. We are in a deep freeze. Folks, you're about to hear 3 hours of incredible programming halfway through. Our regular Tuesday guest, Mr. Stan Dale, just so incredibly blessed to have him come on our show. You're listening to the only show where the news is presented to you in 3D. We look well beyond the headlines, the bylines of fog, disinformation, and look directly into what is so important for everyone to be aware of. We broadcast live each and every weeknight from 8 to 11 p.m. Eastern. Our home base on the internet is HomelandSecurityUS.com. That's HomelandSecurityUS.com. We're simulcast, by the way, by the Christians United Broadcasting Network. There you can tune us in at the Hagmann and HagmannReport.com. I want to thank everyone for joining us, and thank you for your belief, your trust in us, for keeping us in your prayers, for telling others about the program. We're just blessed to have you. So, it's cold. It's a little bit cold out there. We've got the fires burning here. We're stoking up. We're breaking the furniture, making a fire in the middle of the studio.
Yeah, sounds like what I had to do last night at my residence last night. My furnace decided to die at about 12:30 at night. Literally.
Conspiracy, I tell you.
This morning I could see my breath. It was bad, and it's still not fixed, but it is the residence is heated. It has heat now. I'm waiting for the new furnace to get installed, but
of course you like us, a tire rim or the rim of a tire in the middle of the living room, and just a few pieces of furniture, stick furniture, burning. Yeah,
it was just the worst timing for that. To lose your last night was the coldest night I can ever remember. It was minus 40, 45 degree wind chill. I think it was minus 10. And just not a good night to lose your heat, and I wasn't really upset. It's kind of odd because I almost expected it. I almost expected a power outage or the furnace to die. It's an old furnace, and it just happened. And I knew, I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be a long night." So I didn't hardly get any sleep last night, and not because I was cold. It's just because that furnace kept kicking on, and you're worried about, is this thing going to blow up on me? Yeah. So it was a rough one, but it was an interesting experience because, you have thousands of people in Indianapolis who are without power. You have, actually, when the heating people were at the house today, natural gas people from our city came around and was going door to door. They had a flow problem, so
that made the news today. Yes, and we have to look at this as a dry run, or as what we are all going to potentially experience when this happens. That's why we're talking about this, not because we want to just fill airtime.
Yeah, the gas company was going door to door today, and telling people that they're having a problem with the pressure in the gas lines, and people's homes, their furnaces were constantly running, and you could have it set on 80 from what one of the neighbors said, and it wouldn't go up to 68. So I wasn't alone in that cold, and just imagine all the people that don't have homes that were not put in shelters, didn't go to shelters, and it was rough, but it was an interesting experience, but just a rough time. Couldn't have had a practice run when it was 45 degrees out. It had to be in the coldest night, but
as it always happens, and this is something we should think about and we should plan for. If you've got generators, in fact, on the news 2 nights ago, it came across it locally here. They said if you have generators, make sure, test them out, make sure that you've got the fuel for them, make sure that they're running. So it was. Obviously, there was some. Well, are we being prepared for something? I guess that's my question. And I know that people talk about the weather, and of course, weather happens. But is this something out of the ordinary? Inquiring minds want to know.
I don't know. I did a little bit of research today, and apparently there was a polar vortex. There was even an article about a Time magazine calling the last polar vortex or whatever this thing was, that this happened in the 70s in some point in time. And here's the article. Time magazine blamed polar vortex on global cooling in 1974. And you sent me an interesting article,
and I think we should reference that because I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I wanted to make sure that this is presented. The Hercules vortex, and the author of this emailed me, and thank you to that individual. And I don't know if Steve Cole has linked to this or not, but let's get into this a little bit, Joe, if you don't mind, if you still have it up there, because I think it's important here.
Yeah, it gets into this talks about the naming of the storms and the symbolism, and it really hits on something that we've talked about. It says spirals are a profound image in the esoteric world and often found and carved on many ancient stone circles, pictorially
demarcating and then as a place of power.
Right. Oh. It refers to cult magic. It says the word vortex or spiral can be used to illustrate an occurrence in which a whirlpool-like concentration of energy surrounds an individual or location, resulting in an individual or location experiencing a prolonged disruption. And then it starts getting into the whirlpool.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting from this point on. Therefore, could inquiring minds be forgiven for finding the several synonyms for the word spiral or whirlpool, vortex, take your pick, being bandied around to describe the current severe weather in the U.S., and when considered in conjunction with the documented reality of weather weapons, intriguing? I mean, and I'll ask that to the audience. Are we just off of our nut by even asking, could there be some man-made manipulation of what's going on, even if it's an unintended consequence of something? But this particular article, this website, says, look, it's natural to inquire about this, especially given the situation.
Yeah, and it goes on to get into the rotation, the names, and it says this. It says, what was this hurricane's initial energy, and this is talking about the storm Hercules from a week ago or a few days back, evolved via a ritual magic working then was it supercharged through some type of harp or other technology. It says, if true, then the Thule Society Nazis would have been proud of an intermingling science and sorcery, indeed an act worthy of the last days of Atlantis. And it gets into...
Well, Hercules was, of course, the offspring of the hybrid offspring of the god Zeus, and immortal as is, some might suggest, the storm. So Zeus, Hercules, I mean, could it be? Could it be that, like you just mentioned, that maybe the hurricane's initial energy was evoked via a ritualistic magic working, then supercharged, augmented, or essentially put on steroids through harp technology? Anything is possible at this point. But to what end, though, Joe? I mean, for what reason? Maybe as a force multiplier for something else, perhaps, or maybe. I mean, who knows?
Well, for one, it's really thrown. I mean, anybody who's been in this storm has pretty much had to stop what their normal routine, I would say, or the way that they. You can't go outside when it's 45 below constantly.
Wind chill,
you can't
right.
stay outside.
Right.
So it does have an effect. You see people sometimes stocking up on foods before you get storms like this, and grocery store supplies, and you see not a lot of panic, not a lot of people outside. What if there was a power outage? You're going to have riots and minus 40 degree temperatures, minus 50 degree temperatures? Probably not. But there is changes happening on our Earth and our atmosphere and space, and we are just seeing these constantly, one after another. And whether it's an interval of a week or a month between some of these just incredibly odd storms. And you look at what's happening in Europe, and this is something we're going to get into Stan Deo to talk to him about, the frost quakes, the polar vortexes they're calling it, and some of these other interesting weather topics vocabulary choices and things that have been coming up recently. We're going to ask him a few questions about these. But the weather is a healthy distraction, though. I mean, how else could you distract 100 million, 200 million people from what's really going on or what is important, what people need to be paying attention to, than by making them essentially miserable? And I mean, that's a state of mind that people choose to be when weather gets like this. And I saw an article yesterday saying, this is the most miserable day of the year because of the cold. And Drudge has had up the average U.S. temperature thing for the last 2 days. But there's a lot of focus on the weather. I mean, it's wintertime. We know we're going to get storms. Yes, this was different in a sense of the level of
the
temperature drop,
I suppose, were
right.
Now, if you look at our forecast, we're supposed to get up almost to 50 degrees here in a short period of time. Now, once again, just look at the patterns. Look at the disparity of temperatures, and of course, Erie County, New York. I just saw today was one of the heaviest hit counties in the nation, with almost 5 feet of snow on the ground. Erie County, New York, and that's where Buffalo, Hamburg, Buffalo and Hamburg are. I just want to add this too, because received a couple of emails on this, and very astute people writing. And this website doesn't get into this particular reference or makes reference to this. And one of the new storm, Ion, of course, that's what we're experiencing now. This Ion, this name of the storm. The author of this website writes, and we will put this up. I have had no time to put anything on our website here in the last 16 hours. That will change after the show, I promise. But he writes, one of the new storm Ion. Wait a minute, doesn't HAARP affect the ionosphere? Could it be that this would be another clue to its origins? As to the purpose of all this nefarious activity, well, take your pick. But those of a conspiratorial bent might suggest that it's a primary function, that its primary function was and is rather predictably to distract from current significant events and other rapidly approaching nasties. And I'll close it out with his final sentence on the page here. But one is forced to remark, don't you all just feel it in your guts that something just ain't right with this weather? Good. Your pineal glands are still in working order. And I will link to this webpage from our website here later on this evening after the show. But you're right, Joe. I mean, there is a distraction here, is there not? I mean,
well, yeah. For like I said, people who are stuck in routines and their jobs, and thank goodness that most of the places around here canceled schools for their children. A couple days before it happened, a lot of the extracurricular activities for schools and other government-funded places were closed down. But it's just one more thing people have to deal with. It's just one more. It could be one more stressor that is, getting people upset. It could be one more thing that people are having to spend extra money on. I mean, there's so many things that negative things that this can bring. But at the same time, we see in the news, it's not about the hot or the cold. It's about, is global warming a hoax or not? And this never-ending argument will never end. You'll never have a consensus, just like most issues. And then you have, you just see how people are getting sucked into this. And I think I saw a clip of Rush Limbaugh saying, this polar vortex is a liberal concoction to push their agenda of global warming. I mean, I don't know. At this point, it doesn't really matter if they call it global warming or not. We're seeing the writing on the wall with, if anybody's not seeing what's going on in Europe, these mini tsunamis they're calling them. I forget the terminology.
Yeah.
But you're getting all this massive water coming in from the ocean, these huge waves. You have flood warnings in effect for pretty much all of England, and I mean the weather is just not bad here. It's bad around the globe in different ways, and it can be, as I said, negative, or it can be positive. You can use it as a learning experience. You can. Yeah,
but I'm looking at this more of a potential judgment, perhaps, in a sense. Look what Kerry is doing over in the Middle East. Look what the United States is doing. We're giving them license. We're giving the terrorist license to go ahead and strike against Syria. And of course, it's interesting how the foreign policy. Look at the strange bedfellows over there. You've got Israel and Saudi Arabia cozying up to one another. And they're pushing for, but both of them are for peace, forced to accept a Palestinian state. That's coming, but it's not just for peace. The biggest threat to Israel, according to the Israeli government, as well as Saudi Arabia, of course, is the alleged stockpile of chemical weapons and biological weapons by Assad. So ultimately what's going on over there is Kerry had telegraphed to the terrorists that we had fought in Fallujah and the Anbar province, hey guys, go ahead and go for it. Go ahead and strike against Syria from the open up a new front and strike Syria. And they would be doing so from Iraq, opening up a new front from Syria's southwest. If you look at a map and look at Iraq and look at Syria, you have Syria to the north and the Al Anbar province kind of sticking out, jutting out toward, it would be toward Israel, toward Jordan, and it would be north of Saudi Arabia. So
the unrest over there is just crazy, and we have John Kerry saying that we talked about the Iraq yesterday. This Iraq situation.
And I think we need to keep talking about this because this is, folks, this is the attack against Syria that did not happen via Benghazi, but now it's being reformatted. This is Plan not A, B, C, or D, or E. This is Plan F in the laundry list of plans. So we need to keep people aware of this and let people know that what Kerry's doing is giving the thumbs up. So the terrorists from the Al Anbar province, the very people who had shot and killed so many of our people, are now pushing into Syria with the intent to topple Assad. Kerry has allowed them to give them the thumbs up. And so Syria is not going to implode like Libya. It's not going to implode like any of the other countries. It's going to explode. Where is it going to explode to? Back into Iraq, into Jordan, into Israel especially. And Putin is not fooled by any of this. Putin knows exactly where this is coming from. Putin knows that it is Kerry, it's the United States, it is even Israel, that we are pushing for this overthrow of Assad. So what's going to happen is Russia's by and say, okay, you're taking our own military foothold there to the Mediterranean, which is Syria, and their warm water ports. Russia's not going to allow this to happen with impunity. No, of course not. So Russia is going to engage us in this proxy war itself. You want to open up a new front? Vladimir Putin says, you want to open up a new front? We'll do just that. So watch perhaps some waterways being closed. Strait of Hormuz, potentially a target. The Persian Gulf. Folks, this is very serious. And what will that do to the U.S. dollar?
Yeah, it says here, this is an article from yesterday from the New American. Kerry says the United States will help Iraq but won't send troops. During the remarks to reporters on Jerusalem on January 5th, Secretary of State John Kerry said the U.S. will help the Iraqi government in its fight against al-Qaeda-linked militants who have overrun the cities of Fallujah and Ramadi, and that they will not send troops back to Iraq. Kerry's comments came as he engaged in a Middle East trip to Jerusalem, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, from January 1st through the 6th. And it goes on to say, this is interesting, this is part of the article. It gets into the forces that are being, they're saying these aren't al-Qaeda, or they're former al-Qaeda. It says, this Washington Post identified, or the United States has provided Iraq with 75 Hellfire missiles and plans to send an unstated number of Scan Eagle drones by March. And this is where it gets interesting. The Washington Post identified the militants who have made inroads in Anbar province as members of the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, or ISIS. And Kerry called them the most dangerous players in the region. The Post noted that ISIS was formerly known as Al-Qaeda in Iraq, but was renamed to demonstrate the group's growing ambitions. The influence...
Does anyone see the irony, by the way, in that name, ISIS?
Yeah, that's what I mean. I've never heard of. I've never seen that acronym or name put or linked with any kind of Al-Qaeda or terrorist or any other fighting forces, for that matter. But this is just more. It's like the storm names. I mean, are we going crazy, or is this all being put together in a way to show us something more?
Well, once again, and I think this is so important for people to understand, and I apologize when I mentioned yesterday that I was going to have an article together, a report on this, and I have worked on that intermittently today, and I hope to have that up tonight or tomorrow morning. But here's the thing with this. Kerry, of course, said we're not going to put boots on the ground, we're not going to fight, we're not going to assist, we're not going to do this. But what he's done is he's given the nod, or by doing this, by saying this, he's given the nod to the very people that killed our people over there in Fallujah and the Anbar province in Iraq. And he said, look, we just might accidentally leave some assets in that area for you to use against Syria. Folks, again, the target is Syria. Everyone thinks, or not everyone, there's so many people who believe that when Benghazi, the weapons shipping from Benghazi and the exposure of Benghazi happened, that, well, we just packed up our bags and decided to take our ball and bat and go home. That's not the case at all. Again, this is a fallback plan to a very necessary, just as it is necessary for the United States to be taken down, our economy to be taken down, and for us to be neutered militarily and financially. It is important to have Syria taken out. Syria is a strategic ally of Russia and of Iran.
Are you talking about the Syrian regime?
I'm talking, right?
Because we already have the chaos there. We already have the extremist factions and the freedom fighters, and you have the Christians and you have the civilians. It's already in turmoil and chaos. It's already a country that seems to have suffered a regime change without actually having one. Well, which is really the most minimum part of the whole conflict when you look at countries like Libya and Iraq and all these places that Egypt, the regime changes, you're talking about one person or a small number of people. But this is affecting, and has affected, across the Middle East region into North Africa, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people.
Millions.
Now.
Look at the photographs, ladies and gentlemen, of the people, the refugees. You've got well over 2 million refugees from the fighting in Syria.
Right. They've destabilized every country around Israel. And
correct.
Whether they have done it through regime change or through, proxy wars or, by funding Al-Qaeda. I find it interesting, too, that in this article from the New American talking about Iraq, you have comments from Senators McCain and Lindsey Graham, the dynamic Al-Qaeda duo here. And they're not blaming Al-Qaeda. They're blaming, they say, while many Iraqis are responsible for the strategic disaster, the administration cannot escape its share of the blame. Well, what about McCain's share of the blame? What about Lindsey Graham's share of the blame? Going to Libya, in McCain's case, meeting with Al-Qaeda, arming them, calling to arm them on the House floor, on the Senate floor.
Exactly.
And here they're blaming the president and they're blaming the Iraqi people. How about the U.S. is not responsible for every government and how it acts? But why, we have in Africa, how many militant countries or countries are run by militants that kill civilians on this level or higher, much higher levels constantly? Why are we not so involved and engaged in invading Africa? Well, we kind of are, but not in the central or southern Africa provinces. It's only the northern provinces that are surrounded are surrounding Israel in the Middle Eastern region.
Correct. I mean, for the most part, you're looking at Egypt, Libya, Algeria, Morocco. You've got the Sudan, and so on. But the thing with Syria is, and I really this cannot. Syria is going to be the fuse for World War III. and that plan has not changed, ladies and gentlemen. This is deadly serious. It has gone. Once more, allow me to say that Syria will be the catalyst for World War III. It's gone hot again, this is a globalist agenda. You've got to think much bigger than people are not thinking big enough when they're looking at the Middle Eastern situation in Arab Spring. This has been in the works for easily since World War II. They've got to have a third world war, and they're going to be using Syria as the flashpoint for the third world war. And understand that Syria will not implode but explode. That's very important to understand. Syria is of extreme value to Russia for the warm water port there. Don't forget
to Iran.
Well, right. It's also a backdoor to Iran. Syria is, but don't forget, for Russia, the warm water port of Tartus is extremely important to them, and militarily. And of course, you've got Syria being the backdoor to Iran. And where is Syria located? It's located south of Turkey. Now think about that. Turkey, a NATO ally that has suddenly gone off the NATO map.
Yeah, do you remember, what was it, maybe 3 months ago, they started having unrest, a different kind. Was it Turkey that they had some? I know they did have unrest in Turkey, but there was one country out of all these countries where it was they were reporting that it was a different kind of unrest, that it was an actual people's revolution, and they were changing things. I think it was Turkey, and then that just went away. But we have a big map here in the studio, and in it I put pins in every country that has had regime change or unrest in the last 10 years. I'm running out of pins, and I'm running out of countries. If you see it, if you can.
Yeah.
I don't know if you ever paid attention to where I put those pins. I mean, it's close. And what do they do once they destabilize that? The last remaining, you have Saudi Arabia, you have Turkey.
Well, what's Saudi Arabia? But nothing more than an extension of our intelligence and oil, a combination of our CIA and our oil interests. It's really fascism in the form of a country.
Well, just think about what can be done. You have as you said, the two-state peace process being worked out by the administrations in Israel, Saudi Arabia, the United States. At the same time, you have the destabilization of every single nation that surrounds Israel.
Correct.
Most of them. I mean, you only have, like I said, Turkey and Saudi Arabia, I think, left. And so this peace process is going to come together at a time when the nations all around Israel have been completely broken down and are at their lowest. Now, you think about the peace and safety, what the Bible says, and what men say. And this is why it's so important, and this is why it's reiterated in from the Old Testament to the New Testament, why we need to focus on what the Lord says, not what men say, because the Lord's word never changes, and we know men's words and laws and whatever else they say changes frequently, beliefs, and we have to stay close to the Lord's word for understanding in these matters, because it's not explainable in any other sense.
Right.
There's no reason or rhyme behind what is going on other than the biblical explanation. And what will happen when they destabilize the rest of the countries? Or do they even need to, marching in to put the final points together for this peace deal? Do they have this complete already, this peace deal? Are they just waiting to the right time to sign it?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think that if you look at what Kerry did over the last 6-7 days, I think that Kerry made an agreement with Israel. We will give you peace via a two-state solution if you, it's even difficult to explain. Israel wants Assad out. Saudi Arabia wants Assad out. So what's the price for that? It would be a Palestinian state, and of course, with the Palestinian state, it's peace and safety, as you said. Isn't it interesting how this is all following the blueprint that's laid out in the Bible? That's what this is all about. Understand that we're the enormity of what we're talking about here, and not too many people. I don't think anybody is talking about this. It's all about Syria, the Iraq and our province, Fallujah. The very people that we're fighting there now are getting together.
Iraq being ancient Babylon,
Very. That's right. That's right.
It's not by any left. Nothing is left to chance. I mean, what are the odds you have ancient Babylon being taken down? When you're encroaching on the 70-year anniversary coming up in 2017 of Israel becoming a nation again. I mean, Israel wasn't a nation for 2,000 years. You have it being put back, to reassembled, the people regathered, as it says,
a generation.
Right. And at the same time, you have Babylon being taken over. And if you read really in Isaiah and in Ezekiel and in Jeremiah, it goes through each country. And Daniel sums it up in the end of Daniel, where it talks about the whirlwind in Egypt and Libya and Ethiopia. But like I said, Isaiah and Ezekiel and Jeremiah really get into the other countries, like Saudi Arabia, like Iraq, or Babylon, if you still say Iraq's Babylon. And there's just no way it's a coincidence that all this is happening with the bad weather, with the technology increase, with the propaganda, with everything we're seeing. It's not by chance. There's no way.
I'm totally in agreement with you. And, of course, you mentioned the word whirlwind. Where have we heard that before? Of course, at Bush's first inaugural speech, talking about the angel of the whirlwind. We heard that a number of times in this discussion. And, of course, think about this. Think about the angel of the whirlwind in the context of what we're seeing take place right now. The book Apollyon Rising gets into that quite a bit, but nothing happens by accident. This is all being planned out. Folks, I really, 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 honestly, and I can't stress this enough, please keep your eyes on what's taking place in Syria. And in that, we had the hostilities or the days of bombings over in Lebanon, and people were surprised. Did you notice the news, the media saying, "Wow, look at this! Lebanon just erupted. What's this all about?" Well, what this is all about is the thumbs up. Picture what's happening over there, much like the Bay of Pigs, when the United States, when the CIA had that group, that ragtag group of anti-Castro people, and they were invading Cuba and going to topple Castro to recapture Cuba. Well, what happened? They were expecting United States air support. It never came. United States support, it never came. That's the same template that's taking place with Syria. We are not giving them direct military support, but we're looking the other way as they go off and engage. And not only that, we've most assuredly left assets, equipment, tools that they could use to go after Assad. By itself, the anti-Assad people in Syria by themselves would be nothing without external influence. And in fact, they're on the ropes pretty much and have been essentially wiped out.
Did you see today that the first truckload or shipload of weapons was taken out of Syria by the United Nations? Or at least it was reported so. And I don't know if you saw this or not, but there was some news. I think I saw this on Reuters and BBC. I'll have to find it. It's not something I picked out, but the news agencies definitely were reporting today that the first stockpile of chemical weapons were removed from Syria. And I don't know how many more. Here it is. First chemical weapons leave Syria. This from BBC. Syria chemical weapons. First consignment leaves Latakia. It says the vessel in northern
Syria.
Syrian port, escorted by Russian and Chinese warships, removing the most dangerous chemicals, is the first step of a UN-backed deal to eliminate Syrian's chemical arsenal. A previous bid to collect the materials was aborted after Syrian officials failed to deliver the toxic chemicals to the collection point. The hazardous cargo is due to be taken to Italy, where it will be loaded into a U.S. Navy cargo ship and shipped into international waters for destruction. A specially created titanium tank on board will be used in this process. The mission is being run jointly by the UN and the Organization of Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. The agreement was brokered by the U.S. and Russia after rockets filled with the nerve agent sarin were fired at 3 towns and in the agricultural belt around the Syrian capital in Damascus on August 21st. Hundreds of people were killed in the attacks. I thought it was thousands when it happened. Do you remember that? When this chemical weapons attack happened? They were saying hundreds of people were killed in the attacks. This, again, from BBC. Western powers said only Syrian government forces could have carried out the assault, but President Assad blamed the rebel fighters. And where has the news been on these rebel fighters and the status of this civil war in Syria? It seemed to die out as the likelihood of the U.S. getting involved in Syria was being drowned out. It's just something that is going to have to be monitored constantly because we're not being told the truth on anything in the mainstream media, and what we do get are bits and pieces. 5% truth in an article or a story.
It's misdirection at best, or at least, I should say. The blowback is going to be great. Folks, just to recap this, and please, please, please keep this in the front part of your mind. Looking at my notes after speaking with perhaps one of the most clued in individuals about what's taking place. Just to recap, through Kerry's whirlwind tour of the Middle East, he gave the thumbs up. He told Al-Qaeda and Ansar al-Sharia or whoever, it doesn't matter, this group of anti-Assad, this group of terrorists, thumbs up, good to go. We're not going to take any military assets to assist them with the uprising. However, we're not going to meddle in the affairs that it's a go signal to open a new front on the southwestern portion of Syria to go against Assad. Look at a map, please. Get a map out. If you have an encyclopedia at home or a globe or whatever, look at Iraq. And if you look at a triangle, for example, an equilateral triangle, and we'll say with a pointed end, one of the pointed ends sticking directly out to the left. Well, on top of that edge would be Syria. And if you followed the bottom portion of that, the lower part of that triangle would be Saudi Arabia. And I've had difficulty. I mean, it's difficult when you're not from or familiar with an area. It's difficult to create a picture in your mind as to the geographical significance of these countries. And, of course, the furthest end, the opposite the point, that would be that portion of Iraq. If Iraq was the triangle that the left-handed and the points on the left-hand side, Iraq would be, or Syria would be above that point or that edge, and Saudi Arabia would be below it, and then directly where the bottom would be, or to the right, would be Iran. And if you kind of put that in your mind and form that mental picture, Syria above that, Syria to the north. I'm sorry, I said open a new front on the southwest. I should have said open a new front on the southeast. Open a new front on the southeast. So that's what's taking place. And, of course, Turkey is above Syria. So you've got Turkey on the top, then Syria, and then that Anbar province sticking out in the point of the triangle below that, and then below the triangle, which is Iraq, is Saudi Arabia. That's kind of the stacking of the countries. And the further left you go, or the further west you go, if you're looking at the map, you're going to run into Israel, and then you'll get into the Mediterranean. Well, That's the geographical layout of the area. So the actual push right now that we're going to see is these terrorists that have overtaken Fallujah and the Anbar province push northwest into Syria. Go right into Damascus, go right into Syria itself. And we are just taking a hands-off policy. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia and Israel are joining up and will accept a two-state solution. They will accept this Palestinian state. They will look the other way as well, as long as Assad's out of there, and the chemical weapons, which are so terrible, they say, and such a threat. Well, the caliphate will be complete by the overrunning of Assad, taking Assad out of there, and you just watch all of the other countries follow suit, and the caliphate will be complete. The Russian blowback will be immense because Russia knows what's going on. Putin knows exactly what's going on. He knows, just like he knew in Benghazi, he knows what we are doing over in Iraq by saying, oh, it's going to be a hands-off policy. The Palestinian state is going to be formed. It is going to be, all the assets are going to be against Assad. We're just going to get out of the way and let it happen. Think of Kerry being April Gillespie, I guess, if you can, with April Gillespie, what April Gillespie gave a wink and a nod to Saddam Hussein to invade Kuwait, as the story goes. Well, that's Kerry. And even worse, I suppose, April Gillespie was perhaps used, whereas Kerry is part of it. This is a globalist agenda. This will end up with the 10 nation power center, 10 global power regions. And this will bring forth the one guy in charge of all 10 power regions. One of the questions that I'm sure people might be asking is, well, why didn't, instead of running weapons through Benghazi and through Libya and taking out Libya, wouldn't it be more sensible for things to just start there in the beginning? Why was Benghazi plan A and this plan F? Why wasn't it reversed? Well, the risk of failure would be too high. The risk of blowback would be too high. So you can tell the desperation right now because this plan is in play. When the gas prices go up to $8-10 a gallon because of an event in the Persian Gulf, or when the dollar collapses because we cannot assure the world, the free world, of the free flow of oil by our military presence, when our military is neutered in the process. Think back to this broadcast. Perhaps this is the most important, in my view at least, this is the most important thing that we could tell you. In the run-up to this, 400 military high officers under Obama resigned or fired. Go to Investment Watch blog or go to any number of websites, and you can see the commanding generals fired. You can see that you've had hundreds fired since Obama took over. This doesn't happen in the normal situation. There's something going on here.
Absolutely. And switching gears here, we got 50 minutes left before the top of the hour.
Wow.
We have new record. Feds issue 56 regulations for every new law. 3,659 in 2013. It says, this article from the Examiner says, the Obama administration made up for the lack of laws passed by Congress last year, issuing a whopping 3,659 new regulations, crushing claims that Washington isn't doing anything. Only 65 public laws were signed by President Obama in 2013, meaning that his government issued an average of 56 regulations for every one. a record-high ratio according to the annual analysis by the Competitive Enterprise Institute. The surge in regulations has led critics to charge that the Congress is now a bystander to federal regulatory agencies. Said CEI's Wayne Cruz, who provided secrets with his new analysis, the deterioration of the Constitution's separation of and balance of powers means that regulators and bureaucrats now make most of the laws. The executive branch increasingly imposes its will. Obama and his administration repeatedly say that they are not going to wait for Congress to act, so brace yourself. Cruz's chart, which he titled the Unconstitutionality Index, shows that in 4 of Obama's 5 years as president, his ratio of regulations to new laws has been higher than any former president, including George Bush. And also, Congress hit a 10-year low in passing laws in 2013, but the number of new regulations to support those laws was about average, it says. But 3,659 new regulations, for every one law passed, 56 new regulations for each law. And we know a lot of those come from the Affordable Care Act, but this is just another way that they are circumventing the system. And we talked about this, the executive orders that were in 2010, 2011, even in, I want to say, the late 80s, there was one passed on the regulation process and the lawmaking process, allowing these agencies to make laws through regulations. And we talked about this a lot with the Health and Human Services Foundation, the Obamacare Foundation, as they went back and just unconstitutionally changed all kinds of different aspects of the law without putting it back up for a vote, which is not constitutional or not right. Also, today, a U.S. Air Force helicopter crashes in England, killing 4. A U.S. Air Force PAV Hawk helicopter crashed in the coastal marshes of eastern England during a training mission on Tuesday night, killing all 4 crew members aboard, officials said. The helicopter crashed about 6 p.m. local time near Salthouse on the Norfolk coast. A statement from the U.S. Air Force said the aircraft was based at the nearby Royal Air Force Station in Lake Geneath, Suffolk County, which hosts USAF units and personnel. The helicopter was assigned to the 48th Fighter Wing and was flying low at the time of the crash, the statement added. In Washington, a U.S. defense official said the accident killed the 4 U.S. Air Force crew members aboard. The official spoke on the condition of anonymity because he was not authorized to discuss the crash publicly. Local police in Norfolk County also said they believed all 4 crew had died, and it said family members will be notified before details of the victims will be released. It is not yet known what had caused the accident. It says PAV or Pavehawks, P-A-V-E, is a modified version of the better-known Blackhawks and are mostly used for combat, search, and rescue missions, mainly to recover downed air crew members and other personnel during war and other hostile situations. But once again, 4 U.S. Air Force members were killed in a helicopter crash in England. Also,
we've got to, Joe, we've got to remember a lot of our men and women are serving, and it's a dangerous task. And people have a tendency, because we don't agree with policy of our government, people have a tendency to diss on the military, and I think that's a wrong thing to do. I know many honorable men and women join the military.
I saw a story where the church put up a flag billboard with the "Support Our Troops" slogan underneath it. Just said "Support the Troops" or "Support Our Troops." Well, and they were told to take it down. Then they had to take their billboard down. Yeah.
That's
I think
interesting.
Yesterday I saw that last night, either last night or Sunday night, and it was I didn't get the whole story. It was a short video of the article, but we're seeing the censorship across the U.S. in different forms, and we have a couple stories actually on censoring Jesus. A teacher told a student, you cannot talk about Jesus in school. This from InfoWars report. Teacher tells student, Jesus not allowed in school. A school teacher told the first grader, Jesus is not allowed in school, while tearing off a message recited a religious legend that the student attached to the candy canes brought to his class for nonprofit group claims. Each candy cane the first grader, Isaiah Martinez, brought for his classmates at Mercy Elementary came attached to the legend the legend that a candy maker created candy canes to symbolize the life of Jesus Christ, in which the teacher reportedly tore off each candy cane and threw in the trash under the direction of the school principal. After telling the child, Martinez, that Jesus is not allowed in the school, the teacher handed him back his candy canes without the messages attached. The child continued to handy out the candy canes, and Advocates for Faith and Freedom said in its press release that Isaiah nervously handed out the candy canes to his classmate. He didn't want any trouble. He was nervous that he was in trouble, and continued to hand out the candy canes. It goes on to say that this group goes on to say that it's time to push back in the right direction, where kids can express true tolerance without religiously motivated hostility from their teachers and school officials.
Just 2 minutes ago, Joe, and what I'd like to do in articles like this, I'd like to gauge a public reaction. And if you look, there's currently 1,134 comments under this article. 2 minutes ago, 3 minutes ago now was the last comment. Perhaps it tells a lot. The commenter says this about the taking the message off of the candy canes and censoring Jesus from the school. The commenter known as Grim_Sleeper1. Now think about this. Good deal. Religion does not belong in school. School is for academics. Religion is a personal thing and belongs in the home, unless you are going to teach every religion and not favor just one, which wouldn't happen. Religion in school is just a sneaky way for Christians to start trying to convert kids. Folks, I'm submitting that to you without comment. You're muted, which is a metaphor for yeah. And I want to thank Sandy. Sandy, thank you very much for your email. She writes when I was referencing that triangle, because I'm kind of a visual person, so she said, "Have you noticed that the triangle you're referring to is along the 33rd parallel?" Both Baghdad and Damascus are along that same parallel. Now, that's an interesting observation for a lot of reasons. Before we get to the top of the hour and move on, I know you're ready to move on, Joe. I just want to say this, gun sales in 2013, last year. Have you seen this? Folks, if you don't think, we can pretend all day long that everything is fine, right? Big box stores selling TV sets, everything is great. Wow. Well, listen to this. FBI, new statistics on NICS background checks, 2013. Gun sales hit a new record. Now, the total number...
2 million more, yeah.
But the numbers, if you look at the numbers, 21,093,273 were processed, NICS background checks processed. That was in 13, last year. The year before, 19,592,303, up 1.59 million. Now, Texas they came in as the most, this 1,000,006. Kentucky came in second with 1,000,057, 1.57 million, that is, or 1.58, I suppose, rounding up. And the significant numbers came during a year when Democrats and the White House attempted multiple times just to push through new gun control measures by fiat. In 2013, Obama released a number of executive actions. And I want to apologize, too, to Larry. I apologize. We got off, we were talking about executive orders and executive actions, and as Limbaugh says, words do mean things, and there's a difference there. I had improperly characterized a couple of executive actions as executive orders, and I made that mistake, and I apologize to Larry for being snarky about it, and also for the listeners for my improper use of the word executive orders when I meant executive actions. They're coming after the guns in 2014. States that implemented more gun control measures last year saw a huge spike in gun sales relative to population now. So gun sales in Maryland, for example, doubled, going from 136,604 in 2012 to 231,361 in 2013. But one thing not asked in this, when we talk about this, do you find it a little bit troubling that they know exactly to the number of the gun sales. The FBI does. And exactly who's buying them, what states. Folks, this registration process, say what you will, but registration does lead to confiscation. And we can argue that all day long if you want to argue that. But show me a country, show me a leadership, show me where there was no registration, but there was confiscation. You won't find it.
Interestingly enough, I saw an article today where former Mayor Bloomberg, it was titled Bloomberg Stops Push for Gun Control from an Order from Democrats. Something along those lines. Well, one, he's not mayor anymore. That was recently changed.
No, they got the mother of all, granddaddy of all progressives now.
And yeah, it doesn't get any worse than Bloomberg, at least not yet.
Oh yeah, it does. Oh yeah, wait,
give it a few more days, I know.
Oh wait.
But it was interesting, and I didn't even save it. I just saw the headline, but I kind of glossed over it and thought, well, what does it matter what Bloomberg says anymore? He's not in charge, can't do anything. But the part that was interesting was from orders from higher-ranking Democrats, and I didn't really understand or get where that was going, nor did I take the time to read the article. But something to keep in mind. Also, I found this article to be real interesting. Car makers keep data on drivers' locations. A government report finds that major automakers are keeping information about where drivers have been collected from onboard navigation systems for varying lengths of times. Owners of cars can't demand that the information be destroyed, and the U.S. Senator is requesting the investigation that raises questions about driver privacy. The Government Accountability Office, in a report released Monday, found that major automakers have differing policies about how much data they collect and how long they keep it. Automakers collect data in order to provide drivers with real-time traffic information, to help find the nearest gas station or restaurant, to provide emergency roadside assistance, and stolen vehicle tracking. But the report found if companies retained data, they did not allow consumers to request that their data be deleted, which is a recommended practice. Now, this is a theme that we're, talking a lot about, is this technology increase, the tracking of people through facial recognition, through there's a huge biometric identification push, and we talked about this last week, but ex-DARPA head wants you to swallow your ID microchips. Former DARPA director and now Google executive Regina Dugan is pushing for an edible authentication microchip, along with an electronic tattoo that can read your mind. Dugan is the head of advanced technology at Google Motorola and told audiences all things at the D11 conference that company was working on a microchip inside a pill that users would swallow daily in order to obtain the superpower of having their entire body act as a biological authentication system for cell phone, cars, doors, and other devices. The pill has a smart chip inside, Dugan said. And what it amounts to inside out, a potato battery. When you swallow it, acids in your stomach serve as the electrolyte and powers it up. Anyway, I know we're at the top of the hour here, and we're going to have Stan be calling in shortly. So we see this rise in technology, and we see where this is headed. And it is not a pretty ending. And I guess we'll have in the third hour some time to get into some of these other stories, but that mirror this story and the car tracking story. And with that, we're going to go to break. We're going to come back.
Joe, these are not, I just want to kind of pick up on this. These are not small stories. These are not just little interesting tidbits. This is the groundwork for this RFID tracking and microchipping. Really, the infrastructure has been built, and now they're rolling this out in different areas.
Yeah, and I didn't show you the stuff I had found over the weekend that deal with this. That get in. There's a. We'll get into it after we're done. After Stan Deo is done for his hour, we're going to go to break so we can have him on. But there is a biometric conference, and they had. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to hour number 2 of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report this Tuesday, January 7th, 2014.
You want to go for another day, like Wednesday, Friday?
Got the days wrong, the months wrong. Next will be the years. So with that, we have Stan Deyo with us. Every Tuesday, Stan Deyo joins us. Go to his website at standeyo.com and check out bookmark that, and they have excellent stories. They link to videos of the day, pictures of the day, videos of the week, audios of the week, and all the important books and information you need right at your fingertips. With that, it's glad to have you back, Stan. I think this has been 3 weeks since your regular time slot since you've been on.
About last Thursday.
No,
Tuesday.
Yeah.
Well, the regular time. Yeah. But the regular Tuesdays with Stan. Yes, we can't forget that.
Right. Well, good to be back, guys. A lot happening out there, isn't there?
Well, yeah. Are we seeing monkeys, so to speak? I mean, this weather stuff. What are we seeing here, Stan?
Well, where you are, did you get a lot of cold weather?
It was only about 40 below with the wind chill. Wasn't.
Oh, was that all?
Yeah, I was out there sunbathing and getting my tan going. Didn't
Under
last
the
long.
North Polar Vortex, I think they were talking about.
Yeah, and this is you wrote in here a couple of things that you wanted to hit on, and one of these is the polar vortex. And I had my question answered today when I saw the article that Time magazine called a polar vortex from 1974 due to global cooling. And my question was going to be to you was, do you remember them having a storm like this and calling it a polar vortex in your time?
Well, I don't remember that, but then I wasn't paying attention to those kind of things back in those days. But the interesting point about it is that these polar vortices do occur periodically, and primarily over two areas. They're a normal phenomenon. They get stronger and weaker depending upon how far down the jet stream dips in the northern hemisphere and the equivalent in the southern hemisphere over Antarctica. I've got a couple of maps that are on the show images. I sent you the link for it. It's on show images. Stan Deyo, if you go to a Stan Deyo website, like you said, and go down to the microphone on the right. But anyway, on the second line of that, of those images, if you click on that, it shows you where these polar vortices normally form, and whether it be in the northeastern part of Canada or whether it be down at the South Pole and near it's a little indent down. You see a green circle I've pointed on, and that shows you the breeding place. But other planets in our solar system have the equivalents of it. Mars and the ones in Saturn are quite extraordinary in that in the northern pole region of Saturn, the polar vortices form a perfect hexagonal shape, six-sided shape, because of the way it balances out. And we have, if you look at the south polar vortices here, where there's not a lot of landmass in the way, you'll see that there are six circular areas there, which are not as equally balanced as they are on Saturn, but they do show you the tendency to form this hexagonal formation, even on Earth. However, it doesn't hurt to kind of stay ahead of the game if you are experiencing unusual weather, to go ahead and do like you've done and research back into weather history and get some kind of an idea about it. Holly's Prudent Places, the CD-ROM has sections on the history of like lightning strikes and tornadoes and hurricanes and the path of them, the years they occur. And that kind of gives you an idea on a lot of these things. I don't know that polar vortices are one of the main things, but on other types of storms and things and the path of them where they normally hit, these are in that Prudent Places CD-ROM. Anyway, when it hits you, of course, you get more concerned with what it is, whether it's exceptional or whether it's just one of those periodic things, and you happen to be more aware now with the internet. You get any reports on the show here in the last few days of any of your listeners, running out of power or still out of power, and that kind of stuff?
Not necessarily direct reports, but I did see something today that Indianapolis was dealing with power outages, and they were one of the being hit with some of the most drastic cold temperatures and wind chill reports there. And there has been, in our local town, we had the gas company had a problem with the flow of its gas, the pressure of its gas, And we
Really?
see the stories of the power grids being taxed across the country where it's cold, and they're calling for people to turn their heaters down, kind of like air conditioners in the summer.
Locally here, Stan, yep. Thermostats, they want everyone's thermostat at 68 degrees. They're saying that the flow of gas has been, they can't pump the gas through they're having pressure problems with the gas. I'm sorry.
But why are they? I mean, what is that? Are there like valves or
No. They're just saying it's because of the cold.
My furnace broke last night, Stan, and that was a lot of fun. And today we had the heating people come over, and the gas company was going door to door on our street telling people that the pressure or flow of the gas was having problems. And the neighbors, and I'm sure this was frequent with lots of the neighbors I have, was that they had their thermostat set on 75, 80, and the heat was only heating it up to the upper 60s, if that. And many people were having problems where they couldn't heat their homes the way they wanted to or really need to in this weather. If it's going to be minus 40 outside, it's a rare time that you probably set your thermostat above 68 or 70 anyway. And a lot of people couldn't do it. So whether it was an intended cutting down of the gas or they were actually having problems with the pressure steaming through their lines, that's something I don't know, but that's what they were saying. It was a issue with the lines. And not sure if it's back to normal yet, but we had to run a couple of space heaters in our house on top of the furnace going.
Well, we've advanced in technology over the last 100 years or so, and we've put ourselves into a position of real vulnerability as a nation of people here in the States. I guess in Europe they've done the same thing, in China. But when we moved away from everyone having their own wood supply and having a wood fire, and crowding people into high-density housing, in apartments and that sort of thing, we then exposed ourselves to this kind of problem should our power or gas supplies be interrupted for a period of time, that would cause us to freeze or fry, I guess, in the summertime. So, we've progressed to a point where we're depending on central energy distribution, and that is really a very weak position to put the average householder into. I keep pushing for let's develop decentralized power production, at least into maybe county levels, if not at home levels, so that people in one state can have a disaster that hits them, but it doesn't get all the homes at once. And certainly in the neighboring states and down the grid, they're not going to be worried about it because they're producing power themselves that is fed into the grid. There's no need to change the grid structure, but there certainly is a need for people to have their own auxiliary power production plants of some sort near their homes or in their neighborhoods with a group of homes or whatever, so they can go to emergency power when the mains or the grid is in trouble. Anyway, that's my soapbox on getting decentralized energy. That's one of my favorite topics. But, hey, listen, did you see that we had one of those 10-foot diameter asteroids? They discovered it the 2nd of January after it passed within 250 miles of the Earth's surface.
I heard that. Oh, gosh. Talk to us, Stan, about that.
Well, look, you can't blame the astronomers. Those are so small in astronomical terms and dark that it's very hard to pick them up until you say, oh, wow, that was a close one. And at least they do tell us that it did pass and that it was a surprise for them. And on that measure, you remember we were talking about Comet Ison's debris trail here back in October, November last year when we were doing this show. And I said to you, I thought we would be passing through some of the debris trail of Ison starting January 1, 2014. And what are we seeing? A lot of little extra things falling from the sky and unknown, untracked meteorite that comes by within 250 miles. This might be some of the debris I was talking about. And certainly, if it is, we'll see more of it between now and the end of the month.
I don't know whether I should say congratulations or get one of the bicycle helmets and put it on my head when I walk outside.
At least it's not an aluminum foil helmet. That would be
Well, so I don't hurt myself, my wife makes me wear a bicycle helmet on the inside.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a long story.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Stan, if I could veer for a moment here, I've got somebody that a good friend of the show. William, this is for you. Can I, if I can just interject a question here that's kind of off the path of what we're talking about, but sort of what we were talking about the first hour. He writes this, could you ask Stan what he knows about Mount Hermon on the Lebanese-Syrian border? Now, that's the source for the Jordan River and, of course, the holding place, or the reported holding place of some 200 fallen angels. What are your comments on that? Because we did talk about what's going on in Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, that whole cluster over there in the first hour. And I just want to get that in.
Well, that's all right. Hagmann is, reputed to be the holding prison, if you wish, of those 200 fallen angels. I don't know whether they're still there or not myself, but I know that area, in that area there, you have the Lebanon, anti-Lebanon mountains on either side of the Jordan, and then you have Mount Hermon, or in Hebrew, Hagmann. But it is a very tall mountain. There's another one similar to that, but of a different geological structure down in Saudi Arabia called Jabal in the Arabic. Now, that is what most of us that study the Exodus are coming to believe, is that was the Mount Sinai, where God appeared on the top of that. And when he appeared, to Moses, fire, chunks of stuff flew off of the mountain and caused Moses to call for a fence to be put around the base of the mountain in the safe zone, so that the tribes of Israel that were with him then, wouldn't hurt themselves by going across that fence and get hit by the heated debris coming their way from the top of the mountain where God was parked. The reason I'm getting back on that is energy required to do various things like porting from the parallel universes or universe where God dwells, and you punch through a gateway down into the Earth's surface, and it seems to happen on high points, high ground. Even the ziggurats or like the Tower of Babel type models were high, so that when beings from the upper universe, like the parallel universe, I guess you call it upper dimension if you want to in simple terms, but when they punch through the veil that separates our world from theirs, they come through with a lot of energy on all their atoms, and they glow brightly. And they are very, sorry, let me just turn that down. They are very dangerous to living tissue until they dissipate their energy levels down to what our average energy levels are here on our atoms. So when Moses, talked to God up there, and he said, "Look, I want to see you," I get kind of weirded out talking to a voice out there in the bush somewhere. And God says, "Okay, approach, but you can't see me direct. I want you to stand here in this cleft of this mountain." Now, that's like a kind of a broken, sharp hollow that's inside the mountain. And I looked at in Saudi Arabia at JETRADIO, with the Google Earth, and sure enough, it does have these peculiar sharp clefts where Moses would have been up near the top. And anyway, God says, "Look, stand in there to hide you from my direct energy. I'm sitting here on top of the mountain, and fire and brimstone are coming off, or fire and flames and whatever." And he said, "I don't want you to get hurt, but I'll project my image up on a cloud here, so you can see it from where you are, and you can see the image, and that won't hurt you." So God was accounting for the increased energy density that way. So for the 200 trapped angels over in Mount Hermon, I don't know that they would have the same energy levels, and they may be down underneath that very deep into the inner side of the planet, into the bottomless pit, or into a cavity shielded by whatever God does to shield those beings when he sentences them or locks them up. There's a lot that Mount Hermon and the Jabal laws have to tell us about when the upper levels of existence, the parallel universe or the parallel dimension of God's kingdom, when beings from that level gate into us. And likewise, in the lower areas of the earth, where beings from the lower energy density universe, lower energy dimensions underneath us, when they get up to the surface, they steal energy out of our environment. They are cold to us, which is why ghosts and things like that do often appear to cause the room to cool. I mean, legitimate ghost reports or spirits and that kind of stuff. Anyway, I wandered off in about 10 different directions. Sorry about that.
No problem.
No, that was actually pretty good. I get that, and that's kind of a frightening thing for me to be able to get what you said. Wow. Larry wants to know this. Going back to the weather here, I know we're going on different avenues here.
Yep.
But could the weather changes that we're seeing, that we're witnessing right now, and we've witnessed here of late, could they be caused in any way, shape, or form by a change in the Earth's tilt? And I've heard that people talk about this and reference that, and I'm curious as well.
Well, a number of things could cause the changes in the climate, over longer periods of time than just weather changes. The sun itself is the main driver for our terrestrial weather. There are other factors that do determine where the weather goes on the surface of the Earth in response to changes in the sun. And certainly one of them could be when the spin axis changes, then the prevailing wind patterns will change as well. And they won't change uniformly in that it'll have different land masses being affected by the wind and conversely affecting the wind's direction itself. So you won't get clear patterns until after it settles, if that's the case. But also the telluric or earth currents, electricity that runs from the poles to the equator and to the equator back to the poles at nighttime. These currents are induced by solar wind, and they create a magnetic field that does affect high altitude cloud formations, which in consequence does create tornadoes or hurricanes in areas where they may not normally be if that magnetic field shifts. And certainly we know from news reports that the North Pole the magnetic pole is shifting at twice the rate of the South magnetic pole down near Vostok in the Antarctica. The change in the magnetic field, I think, is a real candidate for what is about to happen in climate change. Because I'm going on the pre-established facts that the telluric currents do affect upper atmospheric weather and cloud movements and charges and rain and snow and that kind of stuff. The magnetic field is weakening. That is an established fact. The North Pole is wobbling faster, drifting faster than the South Pole magnetic field. So these two things are established scientific fact at the moment. And with us being in the period of time where the sun has just finished flipping its north and south poles in both hemispheres, we could see some after effects of that in our own magnetic field over the next few months to a year. The Earth's spin axis, as opposed to its magnetic axis, the spin axis, that changing is a little bit more problematical in trying to figure out why or when it will do that. I'm sure it has done it in the past and will do it again. And the reason I say that is because I know the Earth in the past has had some significant changes in its diameter as it expanded. And, normally if you follow the textbooks about how spinning clouds of dust just collected together and formed a planet or a star or whatever, it doesn't make sense that when they're formed by this and form a compact ball like our planet, and squeeze it all down, it gets all hot and molten, why does it then become stable and not change its diameter? When it cools, it's going to expand. It won't hold the same compression because of the fields they're talking about that created it. But anyway, I digress. And Holly says I can't talk technical all the time, but that's my thoughts on the shifting axis and the weather.
Okay, and once again, you made it pretty clear to me. The technical aspect of that, it's almost as if you wrote that or said that in crayon, because again, I understood that to at least. You got to understand. I mean, physics and such, that was not my strong suit in school. So it's very interesting. Stan, I've got I had a conversation with somebody earlier today, and I don't mean to take this into areas that perhaps you weren't prepared for. I didn't have a chance to alert you to this, but we were talking about the subject of gravity. And I know Cosmic Conspiracy is a fantastic book, folks. If you're looking for a book that answers a lot of questions about a lot of things, Cosmic Conspiracy, best book out there. I got to tell you, by Stan Deyo, final edition. Please go to standeyo.com and grab a hold of Cosmic Conspiracy. That's number one. That's number one, not in any order, but just certainly that's what I would recommend. And also, Dare to Prepare and Prudent Places USA. Those three items will do you well. But in Cosmic Conspiracy, there are some pretty interesting things that you've written, but gravity in particular. I had a conversation with somebody about gravity, and I remember having a conversation very similar about gravity with someone in the intelligence world, and our discussion. That discussion was: is gravity a push or a pull, or is it neither, or is there something else going on? And the basis for that question was what you had referenced in Cosmic Conspiracy, detailed, the anti-gravitic crafts and so on. And so when after a long discussion, and I mean a lengthy discussion about gravity, I asked this individual if she wouldn't mind posing her question, because it was, number one, a question that I thought was very near and dear to my heart, and number two, technical enough where I could not translate it to you. I asked her if she would deliver it via phone. With your permission, I'll bring her on, or Joe will bring her on here shortly to address gravity. Is that okay with you, or because we didn't talk before?
Is this the government source or just a listener?
Oh, no, just a listener. No.
Okay,
not a government
right.
source. But I will say this: caller did have some experience with weaponry, with creating weaponry, but not. For the government, but not currently. No, this is just a listener, not just a listener, but a listener. But some of the questions that she had reflected some of my questions. I got to be thinking about this, and I'm thinking, wait a minute, gravity really is an interesting subject, and I know, as I said, you had addressed some of this in Cosmic Conspiracy. But so when is she on, by the way, Joe? I didn't give you the number, did I? No.
No, it doesn't look like she's on yet, but just hand me that number, write it down.
Okay. Oh, here we go. Try the top one there, Joe.
Okay.
Okay.
Want me to bring her on now?
Yeah, go ahead. But why not? Stan, I hope you don't mind the impromptu.
No, that's fine.
Stuff.
Okay.
It's been one of these couple of days, Stan, where I couldn't even get anything done. Okay, we're ready to go. Christy,
right.
are you there?
I'm here.
All right. Now, folks, we had a conversation earlier today, and this listener had said a lot of things about gravity, and of course, I can't translate the questions, the comments, so I asked her to call in when you were on, Stan. Christy, go ahead and just fire away with your questions and comments to Stan, because I could not do this on my own.
Yeah. Okay, Stan, I'm actually a little nervous to talk to you because I haven't had the education that you have, but I have worked in the high-energy weapons with the government, designing, testing, and refining, including railgun technology, green farm experiment where we were using, 56, megajoules at 32 kV to, propel objects at 3.5 kilometers per second.
Right.
Okay, and in a lot of the physics and everything, because of understanding Lorentz force to this degree, and something ever since I have been really a kid, and I've been mulling over this for the past 40 years plus. To me, gravity is an illusion. This is something that I believe is one of the largest and most terrific conspiracies in the world. because what I see this actually being, and this is, no, I'm not, you might think I'm completely nuts, but if you take and listen to Dr. Chuck Missler, and he touches on a part of this, on the electric universe, how the scientists over in Geneva and so on have been taking and looking at I'm trying to think of. I'm sorry, I'm at a loss for. I'm very nervous.
Okay.
Please excuse
Don't
me.
be nervous.
But
Don't be nervous.
in any case, when we look at the northern lights, okay, these are actually plasmic discharges, which are the electrical currents coming from the sun, which says that we actually live in basically a plasma. And if you look at the electricity, that they have to be very careful whenever they take and they dock to a satellite or something when they're up in space. They have to be very careful that they do not, basically electrocute themselves because of the static that is building up. So what I think this, what I think gravity actually is basically an electrostatic field on a planetary level that is strong enough to actually hold an atmosphere down to Earth, which is what, of course, gives us our weather and everything. And if you think about the things like, as an example, okay, anything, whenever you talk about anti-gravity, anti-gravity to me is completely nonsense because, first off, no gravity. But what you're doing is you are actually, by taking, as an example, you can take 250 turns of number 30 wire, plug it into a 110 outlet, and that thing will jump right off the floor because it's creating a field within that electrostatic field, which is like a bubble in water.
Isn't it creating an electromagnetic field?
Yes, it's creating an electromagnetic field, which is basically like a bubble within the field. And if you think of gravity as an electrostatic field, you can actually see how that would really drag on a person and drag exactly like it would with time and everything else. I believe is all particularly connected, just as Einstein said. I mean, all the equations all fit.
Well, let me address that this way. It would be very strange for gravity to exist as a one-directional field in our universe. Everything in the universe that we can measure at the moment is an exchange of energy from one density of energy to a lower or other density. Now, that means that there's a two-way exchange, high energy density going into the low energy density and pushing some of that back into the high energy density area of wherever they are in space and conducting an experiment.
I understand. I'm
sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I understand that particular thing, but then again, see, it's not just like our planet, but I'm talking about every planet. And when you take and you rotate a planet, like we're rotating at 1,000 miles an hour. I mean, 24,000 miles around, and it takes an hour to go 15 degrees. So we're traveling 1,000 miles an hour, and then our planet is traveling, of course, at 67,000 miles per hour going around our sun. Now, each one of these are creating their own field, okay, but when they're spinning, they're actually rotating the magnetic force itself. And if you look at the equations, they actually do exactly the same thing, where they actually take and make these ripples and bumps where you would actually be pulling, just like they say with gravity, how they say that, the sun will actually make like grooves because of its spinning nature. And it would do the same thing if you have an electrostatic field. And actually, it would actually solve the equations for when you're looking at things like the globular clusters.
Well, there's another thing that would solve those equations. This was discussed in 1957 at Chapel Hill when the United States hosted an international conference of the leading cosmological physicists in the world. and it was a conference on the role of gravitation in physics. Now, 40% of their effort in trying to determine this was directed at fluid dynamic equations, spins in fluid. And an extension of that, what was discovered and not widely publicized, obviously, was that in a spinning vortex or fluid, there are two forces, it's generalized, two forces acting, one which drives the fluid toward the center of the spin and the reflection of that coming back out of the spin center. And the sum of those two determines where a mass will orbit that gravitational center. Now, I'm probably putting a lot of your listeners to sleep, guys, but I've written a number of explanation of this in a paper I still haven't published yet on gravity and trying to put it into visuals. But gravity really is the sum of inbound pressure in the fluid of space, call it the plasma if you wish, and the net between the reflected wave coming back out of the center of a planet or a star or a galaxy, etc. Even a globular cluster is really in a state of either forming or coming undone. And I think in the age of the universe, it would be coming undone now. I know this is kind of difficult to explain without waving my hands and drawing pictures for you with my crayon, but really, gravity would be...
It's an interesting mental exercise.
Oh, it is. It is.
But the context in which our discussion was held, Stan, was the ability, for example, to travel at, for example, for a craft to travel interdimensionally. Am I getting that right?
Well, yes, and also another part of this too was also because I can prove this mathematically. Of course, I can't do that over the phone, but you can take a look at the way, like I was saying, like when you put yourself into basically creating a Hilbert space around yourself by this field. You are no longer having that same drag that you would have from what they call gravity. So you're free to move back and forth or make right-angle turns at high velocities without any effect.
Well, yes, and creating that space you're talking about means that you permeate every atom of the crew and the craft they're in with a polarized field, and changing the polarity of that field, the angle of attack of it, changes so rapidly changes your atom's orientation that you don't get structural fatigue, and you can make those high-speed turns. But conserving the Einstein equation on that, you have to have something give in the equation. So time, the rate of passage of time for the atoms on board the ship has to change relative to those outside the ship, outside the bubble.
Well, yeah. They stay constant outside the bubble because they're not actually affected by this particular change that we're talking about here. But if you were able to have a magnification where you could zoom on a person and keep them magnified in the same scope as you tore away at speed, you would actually see them slow down.
Yeah, you would. And conversely, if you were to make your energy density inside that bubble less than the surrounding, you would be able to see them in rapid motion and you would go into slow motion.
Okay, well, anyway, this is the whole concept that I wanted to get what I was talking to our host about earlier today. And I have some radical things that I'm putting together that I'm not ready to share publicly. Although I did touch base with him today on basically people getting off the grid, and I have two solutions which are excellent, and I'll have them ready very soon.
Good.
Well,
good.
And the context in which I thought was fascinating, based on this caller's background, as she explained, was once again the potential for interdimensional travel, and I suppose that's the only way I know how to describe it. Maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but you can see why I couldn't even articulate the nature of the discussion that we had about gravity, and I would even call it maybe just a misconception, perhaps, about gravity. But that's why I wanted her to direct the question to you, because I couldn't articulate it.
I feel like it's like a deception because the whole point is that all these equations all work together, and if people understood it at the level that I'm speaking of, just think where this world would actually be. The New World Order, in a lot of their publications, they have stated over and over again that mankind can never be allowed to go to his potential. And I believe that that's why there are so many of these deceptions, that they do not want us to be able to. Any free energy is completely destroyed. People are killed for their knowledge. And which of course is a concern to me, because I know how to do a couple of things.
Yes, Stan. Should people be? I mean, people have been killed over energy, right? I mean, over developments of energy, developing energy, alternative energy sources.
Well, I assume they have been. I've certainly read a number of reports that seemed rather to indicate that. I talk rather openly about my alternate energy with my research associates in Colorado and elsewhere in the country, and in fact overseas. We use normal email. We talk openly over the phone and over Skype and shoot diagrams back and forth. And none of us have been threatened yet, but then again, maybe we haven't hit on the magic thing. I mean, basically, no matter what kind of free energy device or cheap energy device, renewable or whatever that you develop, you're only going to get in trouble when you try to release something that's easy for people to make themselves to break free of the grid system. And certainly that would be a threat to the New World Order. So, you're not going to market or sell anything like this. If you give it away, the technology, that's okay, because once it's gone out, no one can stop it.
Understood, but yeah, if you try to market it, they will definitely put a stop to it one way or another.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Chrissy, look, I want to thank you very much. I could not have articulated what you did to Mr. Dale and do it justice. I want to thank you. We're gonna cut you loose. We'll talk soon because we've got more to discuss about other things. I just want to thank you very much for your time. Hopefully,
I have one question for you before you cut me loose here. Well, today, when I called you, what was the problem with the servers?
They didn't say anything. They just said it was rectified. Had no answer.
Because it was two different servers. That's why it was interesting.
Right. And for those who don't know, we were essentially offline, or our program was offline, as well as all of BTR, their venue. It was kind of interesting. We did not get any reply other than, "Hey, it's fixed. We rectified the issue." That's the only thing we said.
Same thing.
Right. And we got no response from iTunes. So I don't know what to tell you. We're still looking into it, and I've got a couple of calls out to other people who are asking the same questions. So hopefully we'll have an answer for everyone.
Well thank you very much. I'm very honored to be on. And
all right.
Thank you for talking to me, Stan.
Hey, no problem.
Hey, not a problem. Thank you, Christy. Good questions.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye. Yeah, Stan, I just thought, in the context of anti-gravitic travel or interdimensional travel, whatever you want to say, I thought, wow. And given the background, and then, of course, when the big words were being thrown around, I'm like, look, this is over my head. So, although it sounded like there was some issues there that perhaps you could have, and you did, and provide answers for. But very good. And I would say, too, cosmic conspiracy, grab a hold of it, because you do talk about this, maybe not in that fashion, but you did talk about this in detail in Cosmic Conspiracy.
Well, I did give a simple graphic and a discussion of how gravity is a two-directional system, going one way and reflecting back. And I think if you remember that little cart with the piece of wood vertical on it, the holes in it, and the fire hose, that explanation really is an explanation, of the concept rather than the way it looks in practice. But it's easy enough to understand.
Perfect. Perfect. Okay. Yeah, and you do make it simple in Cosmic Conspiracy, a lot more simple than I could ever hope for. I want to thank you for that.
That was the objective.
All right. Moving on here to some of the other things you mentioned, Stan. The solar activity, there was a few solar flares we saw in the last 24 hours. We have this huge sunspot facing the Earth, and I have to look at the back of the models to see if it's still lining up or if it's going away from the Earth. But do you think we will see from how the activity we've seen around the sun in this sunspot, you think we'll see any more bigger solar flares that come out of this sunspot, and what will be, if anything, the complications that we have from what has already been ejected?
Well, I think we are already starting to see some radio transmission variations, and what the ham radio operators and the AM and FM broadcasters have seen over the last couple of days. That's not a serious thing, really. I think we'll have to see a much bigger event or series of events in succession on the sun before I start worrying too much. Never like to see them pointing right at us and shooting CMEs or flares. But we are at the peak of the solar sunspot cycle, and it looks like it might be a double peak, which means it peaked in 13, it'll peak in 14 or 15, 2013, 2015. And during peaks like this, we do see statistically more Richter 7.5 to 8 and plus earthquakes on Earth. So I would be more interested in following the increase of earthquakes, and serious ones, during this next few months, during the rest of the year, in fact, to see if that holds true for this year in this sunspot cycle. In another 6.5 years, another 6 years, 5 3/4 years, we'll be at a trough where these kind of events can occur again as well. Something I noticed many years ago and looked at in Cosmic Conspiracy and put graphs up to show this, the occurrence of earthquakes on the ascending side going up to the peak of the sunspot cycle and then down into the trough. And so it was mainly at the trough approaching, the neutral point of the low point of solar sunspots, and at the top where they were at their maximum, that we see these earthquakes. And to that end today, I dug into the earthquakes over the last 7 days across the planet and in the United States, and I can see that the United States is in a world of hurt. You can see that on the images I've put up on the show images page. But globally, just looking at it here, I would look at that seismic activity right now. Now, it may get worse than we'd ever had before. I don't know. But this year is the time to be looking for a number of significant changes in the earthquake realm here on the planet, and I think these are linked to behavior in the sun. And we could be witnessing a rather dramatic change in the sun this year as well. There go the guard dogs. They're after me.
Yeah, last time you had a dog dial. You said, I'm going to turn this down, and it went away.
Yeah.
We got to get one of those for our
I did. And I turned it back on to be sure I could hear what's happening upstairs. But, they're good guard dogs. I have to keep them from eating a leg here and there every now and then. They're funny. This is not, a hugely important topic, but we have these little pocket gophers that dig up into the vineyard and into our bushes and blueberry bushes and stuff, and they hit the soft dirt, and then they start tunneling and throwing up mounds of dirt. And you have a dickens of a time finding out where their hole is because they push the dirt up and bury their hole, on the top of the ground. But these dogs, I'll have to do a photo or an image or a video of that one of these GoPro cameras, because when I tell them go get the varmint, they run like crazy, sniffing the ground. They know where to sniff them out, and clouds of dust will just come out of the ground, and the dog will be tail up, nose down in the hole, digging until they clear the hole for me, and then they'll stand back so I can put the smoke bomb down there. But they're good doggies, very efficient.
That's incredible. I mean, I look at dogs seriously. The dogs especially as God's gift to man, and they're a part of our family, and I know they're a part of yours. They're just fantastic creatures. So it's just part of the family. But boy, they can do some marvelous things. And Holly sent some photographs. I just love those photographs that I get from Holly about dogs and behavior of dogs. Very interesting. By the way, I do have. I had a neighbor who has a dog. A couple of things. Are dogs sensitive? We had this discussion, actually. Are dogs sensitive to earthquakes or changes in... Can they predict earthquakes? I'll just ask
I think they can sense things beyond our sensory range. I don't know whether it's in vibrations that they feel through their paws or their body, or whether it be electric charge variations, but certainly our dogs have exhibited, a sensitivity to noises so subtle we couldn't hear them until they were on top of us, but like helicopters with the stealth mode on, and they just come right over the house. And even Holly has presaged these things by pressures in her lungs when they're out so far I couldn't hear them, but she could feel it. And so going on that, I would say that dogs have a different range of vision, the different frequency ranges they sense. They smell a zillion times better than we do. And, they're sensitive to vibrations. That's how they track a lot of things underground or, in the forest, and they track vibrations.
Right.
But snakes and things do that too. So, yeah, look, I've heard enough reports that show dogs get disoriented right before a big earthquake, and they go missing. They escape their fences and just panic. That I do believe animals, maybe not all animals, but a great number of them, a great number of species, do sense things long before we do, even changes several days away.
Yeah, and I see lots of reports about the same thing, from solar flares to earthquakes. There's a lot of chatter on the internet when these things happen about pet activity and the different things that pets, in-house pets will do to pretty much the actions change, their behavior changes. And I find that very interesting, and we know that animals have a more sensitive sense, I guess you'd say, or more sensitive to these things that are happening, or get some kind of who knows what it is beforehand that alerts them to that change. But their behavior is different, when something is coming down the road in the short future compared to any other day, and that's always an indicator. So people need to keep an eye out for that, because it could be a lifesaver at times.
Oh, you bet. No, we're real close with our dogs, and we talk things back and forth, and they have their own language to communicate with us. And as I say, one of these days, Holly got me one of those GoPro cameras you can strap on your head and go about doing things, and I'll see if I can capture and do some of this and put it up on the internet, because it's a real hoot to watch them. Clever.
Jumping to another topic here, you mentioned the radiation levels in the snow, and I don't know if you get a chance to check out the video that I guess went viral and caused people.
Oh, that guy
measuring. Yeah.
Look, you're going to get variations in the gamma radiation flux when it rains or snows. This is, widely known by people that measure this kind of stuff, and it can be due to things like radon gas being caught up into the cloud and then coming down the rain. It can be due to other items of like cosmic ray bursts from the sun, and they ionize things, and then when they fall down out of the sky, it's more radioactive. If you'll look on the internet, look up things like gamma radiation, rain, snow, variations in background radiation, that kind of stuff. You'll find a number of papers on this. And it's not saying the guy didn't measure this properly. I'm sure he did. It's just that it's not as unusual as you might expect. People just don't talk about it. Out here where we are, rainfall with radon gas in it, is fairly common, because out here in Colorado we've got a lot of radon gas coming up from the radiation and the granite and various other things that are in the soil here. In fact, every home you buy here, you've got to do a radon gas test, to see if you can live there or not. But I think that I wouldn't get too excited about that. If it goes 400 or 500 times, normal or something like that, you might get a little bit interested. But there, there are radiation meters across the country. People, amateurs, and some professionals, are feeding the information to people on a map. It's a radiation monitor map. I think if you just look up radiation monitor map or something, I'll just see if I can type it in while I'm talking, real time, and see if it comes up. But Radiation Network, that's what it's called. And I'm just looking at the maps they've got up today, right this instant. And there are no high radiation readings anywhere on this map. And as I say, it's an amateur type thing, really, of just people plugging their data in from their handheld units all over the country. If you get over 100 points, if you look at that radiationnetwork.com, if you get over 100 points on any of these circles, that tells you that you might pay attention to what's happening. That the radiation level is elevated. And the worst place in the country at the moment is right here just north of me in Colorado. It has a 74, but with that exception, everything else is like 21, 31, 23. I mean, just in Pennsylvania, like 49, and in, let's see, where is that, Michigan, 37. So I'm not too concerned about it yet, but I do think it's a good idea for us to keep monitoring or looking at these maps here that are, done in the amateur network, which will kind of give us warning when stuff, blows over from Fukushima, if it does. And I think the majority of it, by the way, is probably going to blow over airborne-wise over Alaska. That's a point. Have we still got time here?
We got all the time you want, Stan. And I got a question. I got two other questions that are critical for you to answer. But we got all the time. You know what? Let's kick back, folks. Grab your cups of coffee, kick back, and listen to what Stan's got to say. Alaska. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. If you'll go to, there's a website called earth.nullschool.net. Current wind, maps. In fact, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll send this over to you guys. I'm going to post it over to, I hope this is to Joe. Did you get that, Joe?
Yeah, I did. Okay. And I'll send this to my dad and post it in the chat room here.
Okay. Now, looking at this, it's a live interactive map to see where the current wind patterns are in the Pacific. And if you look at the prevailing wind patterns that form over this globe, you have to give it a couple minutes to, update itself. You will see that instead of blowing straight from Japan across the northern Pacific and hitting the coast of the United States, that the majority of this stuff bends around and drops over the Bering Strait and over the southwest portion of Alaska. And there's another drop out in the ocean there where it drops as well. So from time to time, if you'll check that map, it's updated every few minutes, you'll see what the prevailing wind patterns are in the Pacific and over the United States as well, of course, or anywhere you want to look. You can turn the globe with your mouse, and you'll see whether or not to be excited about winds coming from Japan, bearing radioactive particles. If I were in the Philippines or in New Guinea, I would be more concerned because the flow from Japan, as you can see on that map, the flow predominantly goes down and hits directly in the middle of the Philippines and curves around back toward New Guinea. And, even Australia is fairly shielded from that because of the islands there and the wind patterns. But it takes a long time for the wind to take particles straight from Fukushima over to the United States, to the mainland in the lower 48. You will get some, and in fact, the wind circulation patterns from the northern hemisphere eventually transfer volcanic ash and stuff across the equator and down into the southern hemisphere, into the prevailing wind patterns there. So no one is totally exempt on the planet from some percentage of the Fukushima particles, radiated particles that are in the air. The water will eventually distribute some of the lighter ones, but predominantly the heavier metal radiated particles will drop into the seafloor. And sadly, the shellfish, the lobsters, the prawns, the shrimp, clams, these things, which are on the sea bottom and filtering the sludge through their the filters they eat with, they are absorbing a lot of the radiated particles, and of course it's killing a few of them, and some of the fish that then feed on them. But that's more, I think, happening over toward Japan in the offshore waters, because these are heavier particles, metallic particles that drop to the seafloor. And there's a lot of deep trenches and just depressions in the ocean before we get here. Eventually,
that's going to really do a number on the Alaskan crab and shellfish markets, won't it, up there?
Well, I think it probably will. Holly and I talked about this the other day, and she says, I don't care. I'm going to eat, just like she was telling Joe, I'm going to eat that Alaskan king crab. I like it. When I can afford it, that's a treat. So I guess coming her birthday here in a couple of weeks, we'll be eating king crab and glowing at night.
Well. And let me be the first to wish Holly a very happy birthday.
Well,
wow.
Thank you. I'll tell her.
Please, indeed. You were talking about radon moments ago, and Carrie from Cocoa Beach, no, I'm not making that up, listening live right now, wants, and this is a question I have too. Carrie from Cocoa Beach wants to know about radon, specifically in her home, is radon mitigation. And folks, if you have a home that's you think you're going to sell or want to sell, home inspectors are and I just had this occasion happen to me. Home inspectors are looking at radon levels in the basements of homes. Now, my missus is trying to sell her home, okay, and she had a radon test done, and the radon levels were off the charts. I mean, they were like 10. I don't even know what off the charts are. 10, whatever. But she had to have somebody come in and install a radon mitigation unit. Now, I've never seen it, but I've never seen it before. I saw it after it was installed, and it was like a pipe, and it was drilled into the basement floor, and that it had a vent, and it supposedly got rid of the radon gases. My question, well, Carrie from Cocoa Beach, her question is the same as mine. How deadly is radon? Is it something we should worry about? And is radon mitigation if somebody says, look, you need to have this radon mitigation done in your home, is this a scam, or is this something we should be paying attention to? No,
that's something you should pay attention to. Mainly radon is a gas, right?
Right.
And all you have to do to mitigate it is to have a little a low power suction pump that takes it out of your basement and also out from underneath your basement, and because it pools there as it leaches out of the rock formations underneath it. It is something that it's not a scam. You should do that. If you've got high radon counts, you should do that for obviously cancer producing byproducts of it. Even granite. Some granite countertops and stuff like that are radioactive. I mean, they produce radon, not excitable amounts, but still they do that. And
that's why I don't have granite countertops, Stan. And
is that it? It?
That's why.
yeah. Me too. It has nothing to do with the fact that it costs $20,000. I mean,
Exactly. Sorry.
I hear you.
Oh man, yeah, it's very interesting and very tight. Well, that's good because then because that's exactly what she had installed was this low powered. I guess that is a low powered fan, and then a pipe that pushed the radon out of the house. Is it geographically specific?
Your neighbor.
What's that? Oh yeah,
your neighbor. Yeah. Sorry. Go on.
No, is radon heavier or more prevalent in parts of the United States or parts of the world than others, or is it just?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's. I don't know what the exact distribution of it is, but certainly it varies on the amount of some of the igneous formations that like granites and various magma type rocks that are formed out of ancient volcanic actions. And anyway, people wanted to, they could look on the internet for a radon gas distribution map or something like that, and it would probably. And I just did that, and here they are. Okay. Well, just do that, and you'll see a big map, and it shows that Texas is pretty well low, and Alaska are low radon. Florida and up the East Coast up toward North Carolina and Tennessee, Kentucky, Oklahoma, those are all low areas. You get up in the New England states and you get up north of the Mason-Dixon line through, Colorado up into Idaho, the Dakotas.
Okay.
Those areas are all pretty pink. That's a Zone 1 radon distribution, and those are probably ancient volcanic things. I mean, look at the Appalachians, you look at the Rockies, and there's a lot of stuff around there. And in the Dakotas, it's pretty, kind of violent or distressed surface from ancient movements of the Earth. So I guess that's probably why it leaches up there.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, that answers my question, and Carrie, thank you very much for that question as well. Closing this out, reports of major report. Excuse me. Jackie writes, if I can talk, reports of major solar flares tomorrow. I know we touched on this earlier. Any comment on that, or any warnings on that?
Well, at the moment, I've got it on a refresh here up at spaceweather.com and a couple of other sources for solar imagery and places like that. I'm interested enough to kind of keep a close look at it. It would have to be a pretty big one, and there's only about a 30% chance that we'll have an X flare today or tomorrow. 75% chance you'll get M-class flares. X ones you want to be concerned with. You get X42s, X70s, or whatever, they sum up in that region, and it's Earth directed, and you might get a Carrington event, where the power lines are shorted out and fires start and all kinds of problems. But we'll have a warning of a couple of days if that event is in progress. If we get a large flare, we'll get the light from it within about 8 minutes of the event, and then the particles that follow behind that usually take a day and a half to 2 days, depending upon how energetic they are, to hit our Earth system and create havoc. But you never like to see a gun pointed at, loaded or not.
Yeah, that's always a kind of an uneasy event.
This would be considered a big gun, because these are one of the bigger solar spots that I've seen in a while. I think there was one last year that I remember that was similar to this, where people were taking pictures of the sun in different parts of the globe, and you can actually see the sunspot real nice and big from just their pictures, even from their phones.
Yeah.
Yeah, that when you can see it with your phone, that's pretty interesting. I would suggest that people, go to Soho or some of the other live solar monitoring things, and they take it on different wavelengths and look at those from time to time during the next couple of days, because you'll see the event there. Right now, for instance, the sun has a large coronal hole in the northwest sector of it, looking at it, the northwest, using our bearings on it. But the actual sunspot is very bright. That black sunspot is actually very bright in the certain frequencies that they do film it in. It's moving on past now. I mean, it's past the center point now. And the more it turns away from us to the right, the better it is. Obviously, it is a big one. And there are a number of things on the sun itself which are not straightforward in the way we think about magnetic fields, which are what causes these sunspots. And these magnetic fields on the sun, it's not just north pole at the top of the sun and south magnetic pole at the bottom. Each hemisphere, the northern hemisphere and the southern hemisphere, have their own north-south in those hemispheres. So the north-south pole alignment, or the north pole of the top half of the sun, can flip upside down and put a south pole at the top, before, say, the bottom half flips its poles. And in that case, you'd have two south poles at the top and the bottom. You'd have a south pole and a south pole at the bottom, and until the bottom catches up. But in addition to that, because the sun is such a tremendous amount of energy spinning around there, it creates high-speed turbulence in the burning surface of the sun, if you wish, in those gases, which are very magnetic. And it has a bunch of little magnetic fields all over the surface. Every sunspot pair, and they come in pairs, has a north and a south part of it. No matter what hemisphere they're in, they'll have a dipole, a north-south magnetic field that joins two spots together. And that's because in that little area of the sun on the surface, a magnetic field or a swirl of the plasma is in progress, and it creates those poles, which are basically sideways to us, not pointing at us, but sideways to the surface, like parallel to the surface of the sun. So it's a very complex thing to try to, from our position on Earth, to try to figure out how the sun works, what the nuclear chemistry is, what the magnetic field behavior is going to be. I mean, a lot of these things that we can observe from here, we can look at them and say, statistically, historically, they've done this, and that. So if everything goes on as it has before, then it will do so again according to that same pattern. And so here's what we need to worry about or don't need to worry about. That's called post hoc, ergo propter hoc. As it was before, so shall it be again. But that is good until the time that it's not. It doesn't follow the pattern. And that's where we are at the moment. We're experiencing changes since 1992 in the sun that we had never seen before.
Interesting. Wow. Since magical year 1992. I mean, what's the magic behind that, or is that just when?
Well, that's when they first detected the new ultraviolet spectra coming out of the sun,
okay,
which indicated a change in the internal chemistry, nuclear chemistry of the sun. So then people went back scratching their heads and, trying to figure out why something like that would happen when their models historically had said it was stable, but our sun is not stable, and the energy coming from it does vary. So we call it a variable output star. It doesn't vary as widely as some other stars of different ages, but that means that a 2% change in the energy output of the sun relative to us, whether it be cooler or hotter, and which frequencies it occurs in, could throw us into an ice age or throw us into better put on your bikini for the next year or two. I mean, it's that fragile a balance, 2%.
2%. Wow. Well, Stan, thank you so much. I know we took you over once again. We always do that. We always promise you, you can go after an hour, and then we just suck your time right from you. And we appreciate your graciousness.
It's good fun. It keeps me on my toes. I tell you what, that Christie's series of questions and things was quite interesting to me. I'm sure we probably put a few people to sleep, but I wish we'd have had more time to talk. I could, throw pictures at her to explain, but. And it was an interesting question to me. We got into magnets as well, which, let me toss one last question at you, and let's just give a hypothetical here. And we haven't looked. We're all getting older as our audience. I know that there are a lot of older people in our audience, and I'm sure some of you folks have had or will have MRIs done, for example. And Stan, you and I both know what MRIs are. But let me throw a hypothetical at you here. Let's say somebody would spend kind of a long time in an MRI machine, the magnetic machine, where they look, use magnets to look at your innards. And let's say maybe they do 3 MRIs, like one right after the other, and you're in there for a couple of hours, and it's really uncomfortable. When you get out of that, is it? And someone would report, I don't know, maybe seeing colors different, or feeling like you're walking in a kind of an altered state. Is that just is that imagination or an artifact of perhaps just being confined for a while, or is that does the magnetism do something to excite the stuff inside your body to make you feel wonky? A lot of scientific terms there. Pardon me. I know those are pretty high-tech terms. brain and eye tissue may be affected only to a minor degree for a short time. I haven't ever noticed it myself, but it depends on the person's physiology as well, their gene structure. What is happening in that is it's a magnetic field that's, of course, going around your body, and it pulses, a strong magnetic field, really strong. And that magnetic field goes down into all your tissue and says to your atoms, here, take this energy, now let go of it. And when it's not like X-ray, it's a very safe way to do it. And your atoms all release energy in different densities. And, of course, they record that on the reflected side of the MRI cage here. They pick it up and they say, here's an image of what the magnetic field is getting back from the human body. It's not like penetrating radiation, stuff like that, but certainly magnetic fields do have physiological effects on the body. I mean, pigeons are a perfect example in that they have magnetite in their brain, and that's how they can be a homing pigeon or know where they're going, is because they're getting interaction between the magnetite, which is magnetic, and the Earth's magnetic field, and so they know to go this way or that way. It might be interesting if you done like a Google search for side effects of the MRI to see if they confirm that or.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Have you checked it to see?
No, I haven't. But I'm thinking that this would be interesting to in fact check. Joe just mentioned during that conversation he just said, so that's why it took you 3 hours to make the 10-minute drive home. Never mind. Okay. What you're saying, and we could search this, but what you're saying is there could be some effects, perhaps temporary, nonetheless. But and the effects have been shown on, as you mentioned, pigeons, for example.
Well, look, I mean, it might depend upon your concentrations of iron in your body in a form that would be paramagnetic or something. Diet. It's kind of hard to make a blanket statement for everyone on it, but I suspect it is possible.
Okay. Well, I was just curious. I mean, I didn't know, and MRIs by themselves are relatively safe. And would you say they're safer than X-rays? I mean, is that what you were?
I feel they are. I mean, I've had a number of MRIs done, and in fact, they have to wake me up. Sometimes I start snoring in them. But
you're the man. Okay.
Holly says, "No way am I doing one of those in a little tiny tube." But with me, I can kind of sleep anywhere. But yeah.
Well, yeah, it's interesting, and as we age, and I know some people out there listening are scheduled for various tests, from MRIs to even CT scans and other things. So that was kind of a question I thought might be relevant to some people, and interesting nonetheless. But
well, look, there are common effects for it. I know that when I was getting off the tray, when they pulled me out for one of my more recent MRIs, the nurse came over and held my hand and said, "Look, you might not know it, but you might be a bit dizzy and do you feel nauseous or headache?" And they ask you that, and so I guess they've had these symptoms before. I guess the dizziness could come, with the inner ear balance or the eyes or something.
Okay.
It could be psychological too. I don't know.
So no reports of anyone slipping into another dimension after leaving the MRI tube.
Well, I heard about one fellow that took 3 hours to drive a 10-minute drive.
Yeah, well, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. That's the reason behind it, anyway. Stan, you're a gracious man. Thank you so very much for your time, folks. Stan Deyo, StanDeyo.com, and if you haven't read it, picked it up, Cosmic Conspiracy, you got to get it. Same with Dare to Prepare and Prudent Places USA. God bless you, my friend. I really appreciate it.
God bless you guys. You're doing a good job. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks,
Tuesdays with Stan. What a great segment. Look forward to that all the time.
Yeah.
And
we never have enough time.
No, and I've got to say this too, because you remember, Joe, in high school, listening, we would get up and listen to Stan Deyo on Art Belt and given all this great information, and here we have it.
Yeah,
here we have him.
7th and 8th grade, especially. I remember you dragging me out of bed early in the morning.
You got to listen to this. You got to listen to him.
Yeah.
Are you blaming this on me, Joe?
Oh, you're
no, I'm blaming this on.
I just hadn't hit the button yet. I thought, what's this?
No, my dad used to get me out of bed. We used to listen to Coast to Coast in the mornings before school, and we used to listen to you back then, and we've talked about it several times amongst ourselves since then. But yeah, certainly a blessing to be able to have you on a show we host. It's
okay, I'm going to go now. You can talk.
Okay.
Bye, guys.
You're like the NSA. Oh, man. Oh, that's great.
Well, we're a couple minutes late for a break. Let's take the break.
Let's grab him right now, Joe, because it's that important. We need to grab him. And with that, I want to just welcome a gentleman who I consider a very close friend, a man who knows exactly, folks, what's going on in Syria, the Middle East, from Benghazi to what's taking place right now. And I'll just say welcome, sir. Welcome to the program.
Hey, it's good to talk to you there, Doug, and all of your folks. Always enjoy Stan. And I just want to take a half a minute here and try to make this picture as clear as possible for the people that are following what's going on in Syria and the Mideast. We know that we thwarted by our unwillingness to lend our support as a nation, as a people. We thwarted not just this administration, but this New World Order crowd in their plans to start this bombing campaign back in September on Syria, on Assad. And that was really only the latest time that we had kept them in check by just a national consciousness, understanding that we were being played. People may not have completely exactly understood what was wrong with us going into Syria or why they didn't like it. It could have been fatigue from just, Afghanistan and Iraq before and back to a lot of your listeners' youth with Vietnam and Korea. But for whatever reason, we as a nation of citizens did not back doing what we were being run down the cattle chute to do back in September and going into Syria. And there wasn't consensus, there wasn't agreement within our own military. Even in National Security Council and Joint Chiefs, there was dissension. And for good reason, because it's not that they were unwilling to do something that we need to do as a nation when we're called to do it, with our military to do things for the right reasons. But there was an understanding something was wrong here. Now we see again that these people have not given up. They have a plan, and they are going to do what they intended to do all along in Syria, come hell or high water. That's their intent. And so if you look at Syria, let's just step back and look at, kind of the big board here for a second. The players that wanted Assad out were Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Israel, and the United States and NATO backing them. But the people right there in the neighborhood, the neighbors who wanted Assad out of power, why did they want Assad out? Well, Assad's, he's a coherent force. He's a nation-state level force. He commands a large military. He had the ability to build very dangerous chemical, biological weapons. He had a massive armament, and he sits right on the border with Israel. Israel has very legitimate concerns about somebody like Hamas or Hezbollah, which are terrorist groups. But at the end of the day, it'd be like saying, I'm afraid of the Chicago mob or the New York mob or, some other crime family, as opposed to I'm afraid of a country the size of, say, Iraq. Well, which one's more dangerous at the end of the day? A country with a coherent leadership and the protections of international law and the ability to take large aggregates of money and apply it to a military infrastructure and extend, project power in that way. Granted, a mob group might be dangerous and scary, but it still isn't the same as a nation-state type of a thing. And so Israel considers Assad and Syria a much, much, much greater threat than just any single terrorist group. Saudi Arabia sees Assad as a threat for other reasons. Without getting way deep into it, a lot of it goes right back into even a philosophical. One of the things that we here in the West are almost insulated from or isolated from understanding is just how heavy-handed the Saudi royal family and government is. You would be for women. For your women listeners, you'd be better off being born in North Korea or Russia or probably any other country on the planet than you would be in Saudi Arabia. Even people talk about Libya. It's horrible with Gaddafi. The women there actually have it pretty good compared to Saudi Arabia. Oh my gosh, it's horrible. And so this very heavy-handed regime that's there wants to extend their type of lifestyle, including a Sharia law, to other countries around there, and they consider that would make them more stable. Remember, in Syria, you had a very large Christian community, the Alawites, that's being wiped out right now as we speak. Those refugees, those 2 million refugees, a lot of them are Christians. And the most important thing, and you raised it earlier in the show when you were talking about Syria, and this is why I felt it was important to take a moment, is this ISIS group. First off, just the name itself has to send alarm bells to outer space. This is an insider name, the space station's named and everything else. They like to put their little thumbprint signature on things that they do, code, with the numbers and names and gods and goddesses and everything else, and they act as though, it's just a coincidence. But it's not a coincidence. And so even with the Free Syrian Army and with the alleged rebel groups that have been going into Syria, they've been under attack from this ISIS crowd, in part to claiming that they're not going to be Sharia enough once they get in power. And so they've been taking out the leadership of some of these other groups, essentially wiping them out, and then taking whatever fighters that are there left and continuing on with the fight. Essentially replacing al-Nusra, who was the power player that we said we wouldn't back because they were just too radical for us. Okay, well, now ISIS has taken that place, and their goal, and the goal has always been by these alleged freedom fighters, that they want to put a better Islamic government into Damascus that will assert a Sharia-type reign over the people. And so Assad is bad because he won't go completely Sharia. Well, that wasn't, it should say that you have a revolution in the country that's being led by the people. You had to bring fighters in from North Africa, from all over the place to come in and do the fight. and the people aren't necessarily, the numbers are very thin. It'd be like saying that some of these oneness groups here in the United States suddenly are wanting to overturn the government of the country, and their numbers might be 1/110th of 1%. And suddenly, but those are legitimate freedom fighters to overturn the government. The numbers were not we were told they were. So if we look at Syria and we say, okay, so somebody wanted to come in and get Assad out and change the balance of power in the Mideast. And that somebody in this particular case was primarily Saudi Arabia and Israel. Well, look at the borders. They're to the south and to the east of Syria. Why, if Saudi Arabia wanted to go to war with Assad, didn't they just go march right up the street on their back door and attack Assad? Because they wanted to make it look like this was coming from someplace else. And we were their proxy agent to help make that happen. So with Muslim Brotherhood people out of Egypt and out of eastern Libya and out of the rest of North Africa, using some of the weapons out of Libya, which they used like a storage depot, and clipped all the weapons in there and started shipping them up to Lebanon, Jordan, and Turkey on the west coast of Syria. It was made to almost be like an illusion, a magic act, where it has nothing to do with Saudi Arabia and Qatar. It's coming from the people themselves, and all these arms are coming from the world. Well, it wasn't coming from the rest of the world. It's coming from those guys with our help. And now that all of those fronts to the west and to the north, with Turkey being to the north, have failed, and Turkey's going into some kind of chaos themselves, the opportunity to bring down Assad has withered away, and those FSA forces have been really decimated. So if you're going to press this forward, what are you going to do? You got to start a new front. You got to spread Assad's forces. You got to come from a different direction. All of his stuff, militarily, strategically, has been focused primarily to the west and to the north. And his supply lines from Iran are coming from the northeast, up in the Kurdistan region of Iraq, and coming from Iran both by air and on land, and some of those fighters. And so what's the one door that's left where you can go banging on the door? Well, it's the front door coming from the Saudi Arabia side. It wasn't the way they planned on doing it, but at this point in time, they picked a fight. The Saudis have picked a fight. They can't back down. The Israelis picked a fight. They can't back. They stirred up the pot. They have to stay at it. Come hell or high water, they've got to stay at it. And so the point with these Al-Qaeda people in Fallujah and Anbar province is that they were a very tough crowd. They were knocked out of power, but they didn't go away. They were still there. They just were out of power. And in this deal with the devil that's forming or has formed now, the understanding is that we'll let them regain power. We're not helping them. We're just allowing them to regain power. Once they have regained power in Anbar province, out into Fallujah and all of that region there, they will not turn and go to Baghdad. We'll leave them alone. The Iraqis will make a good show of it, and they'll start establishing a new, normal for them. But these people want a Sharia-type kingdom also. And so the payoff is we'll let them have their own area if they turn and open a front into Assad, and if they succeed, then they'll be able to help bring a Sharia-type state into existence in Syria, all or some portion of it. Now, these ISIS fighters have also suddenly shown up there. And so now you have ISIS fighters all over in Syria where the freedom fighters were, and now in Iraq, Anbar province, with the same theme again of wanting to consolidate their forces to try and create this Sharia state. For Israel to participate with these, they're sort of making a deal with the devil also, in that they see Assad as a greater threat than these disjointed miscellaneous groups that are not quite as singularly powerful and cannot get direct nation-state level support easily from, say, Russia, Iran, just because they are discordant. But since Israel has decided they want Assad out and have found that they have common ground, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, the Saudis want him out, so suddenly Israel and the Saudis are, teaming up on this particular endeavor. The price, and this is what Kerry is doing right now, the price that this administration is extracting from Israel and the agreement that Saudi Arabia is working under is that Israel will move towards accepting the creation of a Palestinian state in exchange for us not doing anything to stop this group in Anbar province coming back into power, and then going towards Syria. We spend a lot of blood, treasure, human lives to get Fallujah and Anbar province under control, and now we're just going to walk away and give it up back to the same people? Yeah, that's exactly what we're doing. So if we're going to do that, we're going to extract a price, and the price is that Israel has to back off and allow that a Palestinian state comes into existence. They'll fight over minutiae, the details, and everything else, but the understanding's basically there. That's what Kerry's doing. The Saudis will throw money at this in order to bring it into existence. And they have their own reasons for wanting to support it, but at the end of the day, they want Assad out, and that's the price for them. They provide the